trying to track all of our passwords in daily life can be a challenge. It's a little bit like my wife coming up to me at the end of church and saying, hey, I want you to pick up these 3 things on the way home. And at the same time, my boy's coming in and Andrew telling me that he has soccer practice tomorrow night and I need to pick him up on the way home from work, and that Gabe has a project that he wants me to do particular things for. If they're all happening at the same time, I'm going to get flustered and overwhelmed. So today we want to talk about how we can put together systems that will help us with passwords be able to reduce our identity theft possibilities.
You know, Spencer, with financial planning, we think about password management as a really important thing because our lives are digital. And so if your banking is digital, if your investments are digital, managing your passwords is actually really important because we don't want to give people access to some of the most vital information about us. With a bank statement, with account investment statements, there's a lot that a cyber criminal could do with that information. And so we really need to make sure that our passwords are managed really well, that they're really strong, and that we don't forget them.
And that's why we'll dive into a number of different key points that we want to remember today. Sometimes, if we're overwhelmed, we can take some of these steps that are just not in our best interest. So let's talk about the uniqueness of passwords. How do we think about using the same password or something like that if things get overwhelming?
Stop it.
Okay.
But really, don't use the same password for everything. Or if your password is really simple, you may think it's very simple to remember, but if it's any of these combinations, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or you just add 7, 8, 9 to that list, or if it's the keyboard QWERTY, or the best one, password.
Oh, the best isn't the worst.
The best isn't the worst. If your password is any of those, I know that you're already listening to us on 1.5 speed. Change it to 2, finish it as quickly as possible, and then go change your password. But the reality is, those would be cracked instantly. And so when we think about passwords, you oftentimes revert to things that are easy to remember. Family names, birth dates, things that are significant to you because your mind easily tracks to that. But if your mind easily tracks to that, we've talked about this before, but cyber criminals have access to almost everything about us.
Well, and to that point, I've seen on blacklists that there's a geographical feature that my wife loves and that we used for passwords 20 years ago, and that's on the dark web. You know, that's kind of the first thing that hackers, I guess, would go. Now, of course, we don't have that as our password, at least I hope, anymore on any of our accounts, but it does bear in mind that what we've done in the past, we really need to analyze.
Right. And you can think about that stuff too and say, well, that was a really complex password in my mind, but it may not actually be that complex. If it's character limits, we think, oh, okay, I can remember something that's 10 digits. You know, you think about phone numbers being 10 digits long. Those can be easy to remember because our minds are accustomed to remembering things that are shorter. Well, computers, likewise, are really adept at cracking things, cracking passwords in particular, when they're shorter. So the longer that we add, the more characters that we add, the more difficult it becomes for a computer to crack a password. So like we were saying, that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 password, QWERTY, those are going to be cracked almost instantaneously. However, if you make it really long, 16 characters or longer, it could be significantly longer than that. So we're going to roll off a couple of examples, and I'm taking a couple of presumptions from this website called security.org, and it's How Secure Is My Password? And we'll link it in the description below if you want to go test out a couple of your passwords. They guarantee that there is no saving of any of this data, but these are just random things that I came up with. So the password is 8 characters long, a hashtag, the number 1, uppercase W, lowercase EP, uppercase O, and then the ampersand. I can just about guarantee you, I don't remember that and I just said it.
Right.
5 minutes from now, I'm definitely not going to remember it. I may not even remember that it started with the letter A.
But you have high complexity there because you got uppercase, lowercase, numbers, symbols, all those kinds of things, and that would be what we've heard in the past would be best practices, maybe.
Right. 8 hours.
Oh, 8 hours. So
8
that's
hours.
not really protecting us very much.
No, and that's just kind of a typical computer. If you have more high-powered computers, they're going to crack that faster. Now, let's say we were just adding 4 characters, but we're not making it as complex. So let's say I loved the Flintstones when I was a kid. And Fred Wilma 17 exclamation point. So all we've done is added 4 characters. We only capitalized Fred and Wilma, but it's something I can remember. If I liked the Flintstones, I knew that I played soccer and my number was 17, and I'm excited about it. Okay, that's a password I can pretty easily remember. Okay, now we're safe for about 34,000 years. So I feel a little bit better about that. But we can make it even more secure by just going longer. So let's say we updated our password to something like this. I like math more than Facebook, exclamation point. Which is true. I do like math significantly more than I like Facebook. But if I wrote that out as a sentence with spaces and with only one exclamation point, you would theoretically be safe for 700 duodecillion years.
What's a duodecillion?
It's 10 to the 39th power.
Wow, that's a long time.
It's a long time. All I did was just added length. I didn't add any sort of complexity in terms of characters and randomization. It's something that is a sentence that I would normally speak, and it would be pretty easy to remember.
You just can't tell anybody this, you know, what it is still.
Yeah.
I remember Maryville Middle School, 7th grade, had a friend who his password was "Don't fake the funk on a dasty dunk." And all of us thought he was crazy for putting that together. But he said, well, I'll never be hacked. But then, of course, he told all of his friends this. So it probably didn't help him that much.
Unless we were
all trustworthy.
Right.
Which, you know, we're middle schoolers. So probably not.
So none of you are trustworthy. So really, that's the big thing, is your length of your password is going to trump complexity. So really, let's try to think about creating a password that is at least 12 characters. Anything beyond 15 or 16, you're going to be safe for a very long time.
Okay. So unique passwords, point number 1, we got to have that level of complexity in there. What else do we need to think about?
So we're at the advent of the Internet of Things. And so your home is connected. There's lots of devices that are connected. So we really want to think about securing your Wi-Fi. And while that may be like, well, of course I would secure my Wi-Fi. I'm just going to get a good, strong password that I'll just share with my friends. Well, you got to think about all the different devices that are connected to that. We've got connected toothbrushes and thermostats and washing machines and dryers and all sorts of things that are vulnerabilities, security cameras. Like you run off a list of all of the different connected devices that are in a home, and each one of those represents a vulnerability place. And so with your Wi-Fi, yes, it's really important to choose a secure password. For a long time, this is our password, was the home Wi-Fi for our password, because it's easy to remember. We've changed it, but it's a very long, complex sentence. So that's one piece. But then thinking about changing the network name. So if you have not changed the network name and you're using a Netgear or a Linksys router, they come with generic names and generic passwords, which are pretty easy for a hacker to say, oh, they haven't done the due diligence to change the name of their router, so maybe they haven't done the due diligence to change the password. And so those places are going to be seen as a little bit more vulnerable. And it's the same thing with those connected devices. If you just use the device name and password that's given, then there's a security vulnerability. So try to change and update those names and passwords. And a lot of the stuff that we're talking about, it's going to be painful one time, but it's going to be really helpful in the long run.
It's a little bit like freezing those credit scores. Yeah. Not a lot of fun when you do it, but you're also not doing it every year or even every 2 years.
Right. And like we talked about with the personal identity theft, you want to keep the software up to date. If you're running Windows XP on a computer, you want to get rid of that computer and then you want to upgrade it. It's the same thing with your connected microwave. If you're running a software on that is 3 years old, then you really got to think, this is maybe a vulnerability. So that's where with that Internet of Things, yes, it may make life simpler in being able to do some of those unique, fun, cool things, but you're also introducing vulnerabilities. And so we think even about things like a connected doorbell, where you can see who's at your door. Well, that's all well and good, but if I'm on a public network while I am traveling and I get on and I see somebody's at my house, well, that doesn't mean that it's secure, because somebody else may be able to see, oh, he's looking at that Ring doorbell or that connected doorbell, and there may be a security vulnerability just because you're in public using a public network. So think about using a VPN, or just wait until you're home to reconnect to those connected devices. Wait until you're in that secure space. And the final thing we would say is, if you have guests come over regularly, consider creating a guest network. And that way you can bar them from accessing all of those connected home devices if you have them. So connect your devices, your family's devices, and maybe those primary connected Internet of Things devices. But if you've got friends come over, give them a secondary network that doesn't have access to those primary things.
And that really protects two ways. First, you may have people in the home that you need to give access to from time to time that you don't really know that well. Mm-hmm. And then secondarily, your friends may not have great internet etiquette, and they may have viruses that they could introduce to your network, and that just simplifies that piece as well.
Yeah.
So what else do we need to think about? We've got the complexity of passwords, not doing overlap being point one. Second point here, securing the home. What else do we need to consider?
So if all that seems overwhelming, what we would recommend is using a password management tool. You can think about things like Bitwarden, 1Password, LastPass. Even Apple's iCloud has a password management system. And so a lot of these, you've got a lot of options out there, and a lot of them are really secure. They go through incredible encryption because all these companies know if there is a breach of data, there's going to be a loss of trust, and they're going to lose all of their business. And so they're doing everything they can to be on the front lines of protecting passwords. And so, some of these tools are as little as $10 a year. Some of them are up to $60 a year. So really, it's a marginal cost. But what you can do there is you can allow that software to create the password for you. You can say, I want it to be 20 characters long, and I want it to have uppercase, lowercase numbers, and symbols. Or maybe if the website that you're going to does not allow symbols, maybe you can just take that out. And so there's a lot of ways that you can create this software or utilize the software to do what you want, and then not have to remember your passwords. And, that's really helpful when you're wanting to create complexity, you're wanting to create length, and you're not wanting to use the same password every time. If we went back to that really long, I like math more than I like Facebook, theoretically, you could say, I like math more than I like Google. I like math more than I like Fidelity. I like math more than I like fill in the blank. And your password's complex, but if somebody catches on to that trend, then you're a little bit more at risk. So using a password manager is really a way that we can shift away from that general convention and go completely random every time, but also not have to memorize.
One of the things that we do need to remember, even if we're using a password manager, is that that's not fail-safe. So that really heightens the level that we need to monitor whether there is a security breach with them. We used LastPass, and we recognized that there was a security breach at one point, so we needed to update the passwords that were held on LastPass. Now, it's still been a good service. We like that service. It's not the only one that's out there, but we have to recognize that if they're ever hacked, we've really got to change our passwords that are in that service fairly quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. Password managers are not a fail-safe. And so that's why we always have to be really proactive. And there's some really interesting things that are coming out that are on the forefront of cutting-edge technology for passwords. So things like multi-factor authentication, it's been around for a long time, but again, we'd encourage you to use multi-factor authentication. It's not hard to set up, but it really does protect you. The other thing is, I think in a couple years, there's going to be technology that allows us to go completely passwordless. So using your phone or some other secondary device to log you into different softwares or online websites. So really, I think the big thing with passwords is seeing what the technology does and trying to continue to be on that forefront with it, because those companies, LastPass, Bitwarden, iCloud, they're going to be trying to be at that forefront as well. So staying up to date with what they're doing is really important. Though it is hard, it's really important for your online identity.
Well, we hope that you've enjoyed this discussion. If you have any questions, as always, don't hesitate to reach out to us. And in the meantime, take care.
If you like these financial planning videos, please share it with a friend. And if you have questions, go to our website at seriousretirement.com. This content was provided by Retirement Planning Services. We are located in Knoxville, Tennessee. You can visit our website at seriousretirement.com. The information in this recording is intended for general educational and informational purposes only and should not be construed as investment advisory, financial planning, legal, tax, or other professional advice based on your specific situation. Please consult with your professional advisor before taking any action based on its contents. Advisory services offered through Retirement Planning Services, LLC.